and bring this back to where, yes, I did. I went and I put this over the eye because there's a folklore on it, believe it or not, when it comes to this kind of set. And this is usually inside of this right here. But yes, to keep, because I'm Catholic, keeping it religious here. I'm Catholic, so I did it that way. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna get started, and this is start here. Okay, that's a prologue. I said this book is largely what. Start over again because I'm gonna tell you it's not gonna be so interesting and entertaining as the distractions that may come along the way. So please forgive those distractions. Okay, prologue. 1. Concerning hobbits. This book is largely concerned with hobbits, and from its pages a reader may discover much of their character and a little of their history. Further information will be found in a selection from the Red Book of Westmark that has already been published under the title of The Hobbit. So that story was derived from the earlier chapters of the Red Book, composed by Bilbo himself, and the first hobbit to become famous in the world at large, and called by him there and back again, since they told of his journey into the east and his return. An adventure which later involved all the hobbits in the great events of that age that are here related. Many, however, may wish to know more about this remarkable people from the outset. So while some may possess the earlier book, for most readers, a few notes on the more important points are here collected from Hobbit lore, and the first adventures, as briefly recalled. Hobbits are an unobtrusive but very ancient people, more numerous formerly than they are today, where they love peace and quiet and good tilled earth. A well-ordered and well-farmed countryside was their favorite haunt. They do not and did not understand or like machines more complicated than a forge bellows, a water mill, or a hand loom. All they were skillful with tools. Even in ancient days, they were, as a rule, shy of the big folk, as they call us, and now they avoid us with dismay and are becoming hard to find. They are quick of hearing and sharp-eyed, and though they are inclined to be fat and do not hurry unnecessarily, they are nonetheless nimble and deft in their movements. They possess from the first of the art of disappearing swiftly and silently. When large folk whom they do not wish to meet come blundering by, and this art they have developed until okay. Until to men, it may seem magical, but hobbits have never, in fact, studied magic of any kind, and their elusiveness is solely to a professional skill that heredity and practice and a close relationship with friendship and with the earth have rendered intimidable by bigger and clumsier races. For they are little people, smaller than dwarfs, less stout and stocky. That is, even when they are not actually much shorter. Their height, okay, their height is variable, ranging between 2 and 4 feet of our measure. They seldom now reach 3 feet, but they have dwindled, they say, and in ancient days they were taller. According to the Red Book, and in ancient days they were taller. According to the Red Book, Banderbras took Bulwer, son of Esumbras, the third, was 4'5" and able to ride a horse. So he was surpassed in all Hobbit records only by 2 famous characters of old, but that curious matter is dealt with in this book. So as for the hobbits of the Shire, with whom these tales are concerned, in the days of their peace and prosperity, they were a merry folk. They were dressed in bright colors, being notably fond of yellow and green, but they seldom wore shoes, since their feet had rough, tough, leathery soles, and were clad in a thick, curling hair, much like the hair of their heads, which was commonly brown. Thus, the only craft little practiced among them was shoemaking. But they had long, skillful fingers, and could make many other useful and comely things. Their faces were as a rule good-natured rather than beautiful, broad, bright cheek, red cheek, with mouths apt to laughter and to eating and drinking. And laugh they did, and eat and drink, and often and heartily, being fond of simple jests at all times, and of 6 meals a day when they could get them. They were hospitable and delighted in parties and in presents which they gave away freely and eagerly accepted. It is plain indeed that, in spite of later estrangement, hobbits are relatives of ours, far nearer to us than elves, or even than dwarfs. Of old they spoke the languages of men, after their own fashion, and liked and disliked much of the same things as men did. But what exactly our relationship is no longer be discovered. The beginning, exactly our relationship is no longer be discovered. The beginning of hobbits lies back in the elder days that are now lost and forgotten. Only the elves still preserve any records of that vintage time, and their traditions are concerned almost entirely with their own, and their traditions are with their own history, in which men appear seldom and hobbits are not mentioned at all. Yet it is clear that hobbits had, in fact, lived quietly in Middle Earth for many years before other folk became aware of them. And the world being, after all, full of strange creatures beyond count, these little people seemed of little importance. But in the days of Bilbo and of Frodo, his heir, they suddenly became, by no wish of their own, both important and renowned, and troubled the counsels of the wise and the great. So the third age of Middle Earth, are now long past, and the shape of all lands has been changed. But the regions in which hobbits then lived are doubtless the same as those in which they still linger. The northwest of the old world, east of the sea, of the original home, the hobbits in the Bilbo's time preserved no knowledge, a level of learning other than genealogical lore was far from general among them, but there remained still a few in the older families who studied their own books and even gathered reports of old times and distant lands from elves, dwarves, and men. Those their own records began only after the settlement of the Shire, and their most ancient legends hardly look farther back than their wandering days. It is clear, nonetheless, from these legends and from the evidence of their peculiar words and customs that, like many other folk hobbits and the distant past moved westward, their earliest tales seem to glimpse a time when they dwelt in the upper vales of Indwan, or is it Dwin? Between the eaves of Greenwood, the great and the misty mountains, why they later undertook the hard and perilous crossing of the mountains into Eridor is no longer certain. And their own accounts speak of the multiplying of men in the land and of the shadow that fell on the Horus, so it became darkened, and its new name was Mirkwood. So it's Edwin. Is it Edwin? Is Edwin? Edwin. So I just thought about it. Sorry, people. But okay, so to continue, before the crossing of the mountains of the hobbits had already become divided into three somewhat different breeds: Harfoot, Stores, and Valiohides. The Harfoots were broader of skin, smaller and shorter, and they were beardless and bootless, and their hands and feet were neat and nimble, and they preferred highlands and hillsides. The Stores were broader, heavier in build. Their feet and hands were larger, and they preferred flatlands and riversides. And Valiohides were fairer of skin and also of hair, and they were taller and slimmer than the others. They were lovers of trees and of woodlands. So the Harfords had much to do with dwarves in ancient times and long lived in the foothills of the mountains. They moved westward early and roamed over Eridor as far as Weathertop, while the others were still in Wilderland. They were the most normal and representative of variety of hobbit, and far the most numerous. They were the most inclined to settle in one place and the longest preserved their ancestral habit of living in tunnels and holes. The stores lingered long by the banks of the great river Anduin and were less shy of men. They came west after the Harfords and followed the course of the loud water southwards, and there many of them long dwelt between Tharbad and the borders of Dunland before they moved north again. The Foliohides, the least numerous, were a northerly branch. They were more friendly with elves than the other hobbits were, and had more language skill in language and song than the handicrafts and the old. They preferred hunting to tilling. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stop here and give myself a little rest for now. I'm going to take a little break. But anyway, okay, so we're left off at the top at page 4. So, let's see. Page 4. Yeah, because I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go take a break. Anyway, it's a lot to read. Believe me, it's a lot to read. But there's plenty of time. But anyway, later, people.